You are listening to And If Love Remains, a unique show spotlighting people, ideas, science, culture, and art. Your host, Mike Lovett.
This is Mike Lovett, and you are listening to And If Love Remains. I want to talk a little bit about authority, and I'd like to, at some point, talk about where authority comes from, how we gain authority, what it even really means to have authority. I think that's a really, when we talk about the authorities, how did they receive that, and why do we listen to them? What sort of, just how the preface of that happens. But I want to talk just a minute about those with authority, how they should act, and how they should, those with authority, how they should act. Because, and I want to give an example. I have a student, and I was teaching her, and she's a strong-willed young lady. Wonderful. You have no idea how wonderfully capable this lady is, and she's just fantastic. And she is strong-willed, which is an attribute. I'm not even saying that as a negative. It's wonderful. Her mother, and this is the story. Her mother was telling me a story of when she was 9 years old, telling a teacher, handing a test back to a teacher and saying that she'd rather take a 0 than spend the time doing the test. It was a waste of her time, which I admire in every way. I think it's wonderful that she would say that, because what it does is it puts the person with authority in a moral dilemma. What do you do? She's willing to take the consequence, and so there it is. And so the natural way to react to that is to say, well, make her. She has to do it. Okay, well, she's already said she's willing to take a 0. She's willing to take the consequences. It doesn't mean anything to her. So what do you do then? And I think this has implications up the chain. If somebody's willing to not pay their taxes, okay, well, what are you going to do about it? Well, there's a couple of options. If somebody's not willing to, if they're willing to take the consequences, there's a great, Jordan Peterson makes this point back a few years ago when he was talking about free speech and how, what are you going to do if I don't comply with your free speech laws? You're going to put me in jail? Okay. I'll go on a hunger strike. I'm willing to do what it takes. And so how does somebody with authority act? And this is the problem, is we have literally, I'm trying to think, is literally true. Maybe not literally true. But I'll bet you could count on one hand the number of people that and I would go even further and say, maybe even in the country or in the world, but we'll go with that. We'll be conservative about this. How many people do you know that would not immediately move to, because I told you so, because I said so, because I have the authority, because and then it moves right into jail, and now we're turning citizens into criminals. Um, and this is where we're at. This is where society is at. And so you have half of the society saying, no, 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 you must listen to the authorities, therefore blah 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 consequence, and the other half saying, I don't care. I'm willing to take that to not submit myself to this authority. Okay, so when that happens, what is the proper response of the authority? It's wild to me whenever I hear stories of great kings and great rulers and the great men of history. It's wild. They talk about how it was relatively peaceful during their reign. He was a great ruler because he put down all rebellions. Well, what did that look like when you put down a rebellion? What does that actually look like? Like, how many people are killed when you put down a rebellion? When you when somebody wants to be subversive towards your authority, and you want to put that down, like, how do you react to somebody who wants to be subversive? And do you try to silence that person? Like, is that the initial reaction? And this is what happens throughout history is these institutions. Well, I'm just going to say the great men of history. And I'm talking about all of them, the ones we love, the ones we revere, the George Washingtons, the Abraham Lincolns, all of them. Like, oh, we just put down this rebellion over here. Oh, who cares about what their gripes actually were or whether they were legitimate? It was against the authority. It was against the government. We can't have that. We can't have that. We can't have, actual free speech, John Adams. We can't actually have somebody, talk bad about going to war, Woodrow Wilson. We need to actually jail people for, for speaking against a political campaign, Joe Biden, Donald Trump. I mean, they're all the same. Like, the great men, and I think if the women for those women who have authority, I don't think it's any different. It's a human nature thing. So here's the question: how do you react? How do you react? And there is actually an answer. There is an answer, and it's I love this answer. It's all over Scripture. It's all over the Bible. God talks. If you know where to look, you'll find it. But this is, I think, best said in a book that I consider Scripture. You don't have to, but the principles are true. It doesn't matter. Just take these, take these words and ask yourself: is this true? Is this how you would want to be treated? Is this how somebody with authority? And again, another time to talk about that. Is this how you would like somebody in authority to treat you as an actual sovereign human being? Anyway. So this is the answer. And this is, again, it's from a book of Scripture called the Doctrine and Covenants. It's section 121, and we're gonna and he's talking about those who have received authority from God. So in this example, he's saying God has given these people authority, and he's telling them how to act. All right, and he says that many are called, but few are chosen. Okay, so just because you're given authority doesn't mean you've been chosen. It just means that you've been called, and that authority can be taken away. So, so that we're going to start in verse 41. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but it says, "No power or influence can or ought to be maintained by virtue of that authority." In other words, the moment you say, "You do it because I said," because I'm holding a gun to your head, because I'm the prophet, because I'm the parent, because I'm the police, because I'm this, because I'm that, because a piece of paper says so. None of that matters. A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. No power or influence can or ought to be maintained by virtue of that authority. You can't use it. You can't say because. Here is how. Only you can, this power or influence is only to be maintained by persuasion. So that's number one. Talk to them. Try to convince people. Long suffering, by long suffering. In other words, they may disagree. We may have to hash it out more than once. You can't just say, "Oh, I told them so." No, like you have to be willing to suffer, not just along with them, but for a long time. You have to say, "Oh, you are a sovereign human being with free will. I have no right to take that free will away from you. If you haven't hurt me, if you haven't done anything to me, I have no right to just because I'm the police, just because I'm a piece of paper says that you're supposed to do something. That's false authority. If you're using that against that person. By gentleness. When was the last time we tried to use gentleness, meekness, and love unfeigned? Notice there's nothing about, because I said, there's nothing about weapons, nothing about we're going to jail you for what you believe, we're going to silence you. Because the second that you do, you lose, and we know this. The second you use force, you lose your, we say it, your moral authority. Oh, I see. You're only going to make me do it because you've got a gun to my head. And then it continues. Oh, you haven't used loved unfeigned, right? Anyway, so again, this influence can only be maintained by kindness and pure knowledge. Not fake knowledge, not fake news, not fake studies, pure knowledge. And by the way, you can give somebody pure knowledge. You think it's pure knowledge, and they can disagree with you. They're allowed. They're allowed to say, I disagree with what you think is pure knowledge, with which shall greatly enlarge the soul, without hypocrisy and without guile. In other words, you're not going to go tell people to wear masks and then go have your hair cut or go on a vacation, or you're going to tell people to lock up and then do all the things you told people not to do. Sorry, you lost your authority. La 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 la. I don't hear you. I don't hear you. So, first of all, I think we need a little more strong will. I hope to, have a little more strong will when it comes to saying I'm willing to take the consequences. We can't be stupid. Don't put yourself in jail. But I think as people, because we all have authority over in our families, in our neighborhoods, in our churches, in our synagogues. We all have authority with our friends. So, how I think this is the standard. Are we going to be perfect in this? No. I found myself just the other day talking to my son and, essentially saying, I want you to do something because I told you to. And I was embarrassed by that. I was like, I can't believe I just said that. Like that's my first go is because I'm your dad. Like, I mean, I get it. Like I want him to trust me. but that trust comes because of my history, I hope, my history of persuasion, long suffering, gentleness, and love unfeigned, that he knows that I have the best outlook for him. And if he doesn't know that, that's not a him problem, that's a me problem. So, there's a lot of issues going on in our society, in our families, in our neighborhoods. And I think, I'm not going to say a large portion, a majority. I mean, I don't know what the percentage is or anything, but it seems to me that if we could even start talking about what authority is, and how we use authority, how we use influence, and what is proper and what is not. Because a lot of what's going on is improper, and we all know it. Like it's not right to silence people just because you disagree with them. Even if they say horrendous things. I mean, whatever happened to, I disagree with what you say, but I'll fight to the death for your right to say it. Like, whatever happened to that principle? Anyway, so kind of a random thought brought on by one of my students. I hope you enjoyed it, and you know what? Check out that little passage of scripture. Look up Doctrine and Covenants, section 121. And what I quoted was verses. I don't know. See, I don't have authority in English. Verses 41 through 42. There's a lot more in there, and maybe we'll go over some more. But I think it's important to start to talk about where authority comes from and how it should be used, because right now, too many people are, first of all, too many authority figures. Why? Hold on, and I was about to finish up, but I've got to add this one last thing. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day about the defunding police thing, and he was saying how terrible it is that we're defunding the police, and and I get what he's saying. I totally understand it. You can see some chaos happening if we, for those communities that have defunded the police. At the same time, though, the police have been, they have, there's been a long road from the peaceful peace officer to where police officers are talking about us citizens as civilians, as if they're a conquering force, and more importantly, the upholding completely unlawful laws. And we can go to what is an unlawful law, but for example, an unlawful law would be like a mask mandate, that has not been passed by legislature, that has not been signed by a governor, that has not gone through the process that it needs to go through, or if it is an emergency action, is only for a short period of time, and only for the time necessary, and not any longer. And there's a hearty debate about the need for these things, and those type of things. But as long as the police are willing to be against the people, and in other words, let me put it this way. We have to look at the police right now, as they're presently constituted, as, for the most part, protecting the government, protecting the state. Now, a lot of times that will also mean protecting citizens, but too often It's about protecting the authority of the state and not allowing things to get out of hand for the state's sake. So while I'm not a big fan of defunding the police, there's a lot of issues that need to be talked about as it comes to what's the role of a police officer, and who are they serving? Well, they're serving the people that are giving them the paychecks, and I'm sorry, tax dollars don't count. I mean, as long as the government can just create money out of thin air, your tax dollars mean nothing. So they're getting paid by the government, out of the government coffers. So, no man can serve two masters. That's who they're beholden to, and there are many officers that do see themselves as servants of the people. So I'm not trying to paint too broad of a brush. I'm just saying that the feeling among the citizenry, too many people, is that the police are overstepping their authority. They're not. They're asking for IDs when they don't need to. They're looking. They're trying. They seem not. They are, but they seem to be trying to turn citizens into criminals. They're looking for small violations. They're looking to be that another word for or a way to think about Satan is he's the at least in the Bible is an attorney who's looking for any way to get you. He's that prosecuting attorney that is looking for any small little loophole to get you. And that's how it is. And if you read the book of Job, I mean, that's how the God-Satan relationship kind of is. And unfortunately, the police play the role of finding the loopholes to get too many people. So again, I think that's why this conversation is important. What is the nature of authority, and how is authority to be used, and how do sovereign people, what are their rights? That's not really true. What is the relationship supposed to be between those who have been hired by the people to safeguard their rights, and is that happening? All those are really good conversations, and I think it plays a role in this top down thing of when you have authority, what is the proper way in order to influence people, and sometimes that also means that we need to influence less things, or be willing to disagree and part ways. Meaning, if I don't agree with you on something, that does not become a life and death thing. That doesn't mean that we can no longer be friends, or that doesn't mean that I should be silenced, or it doesn't mean I should be jailed just because I disagree or have given money to, or because the authority of government has kind of intertwined into our lives so deeply, everything becomes an existential threat to our ideology. And it doesn't have to be that way. It shouldn't be that way. Anyway, so kind of some random thoughts. This has been Mike Levitt, and you are listening to And If Love Remains.
first of 23 installments requested by Dr. Levitt. Trying to be in compliance here because we're taking him and that whole organization down.